I want to start with something that has been hotly debated on social media the last week or so, and that is the length of Cup Series races. This has been a topic of discussion for a while now, with some fans believing that Cup races these days are just too long. And just yesterday morning, two-time K&N Pro Series East winner Chase Cabre tweeted that Cup races should be, in his words, half the distance that they are now. And Cabre's girlfriend and current Camping World Truck Series driver Hailie Deegan then quoted Cabre's tweet and said, "Think about it. As a driver, you're not going to sit and ride for half the race if the length is shorter. Nothing happens during most Cup races till the last stage for that reason. Also, if you want younger fans to take interest, you have to keep in mind their attention span is shorter." She then added, also, in my opinion, a lot of people don't have 4 hours, 36 times a year to spend watching a race on TV. So, Brandon, I'll pass this over to you now. Should Cup Series races be shorter? If so, by how much? Should there be a time limit? What's your take on the whole situation?
It's a very shaky topic, Ben, so I'm not going to be too opinionated on it because I haven't really been following it on the Twitter sphere, the Hailie Deegan and Chase back and forth there. But I think it's a shaky ground to say that just all of a sudden that NASCAR Cup races should just be half the distance that they are now. Because you have to think about this not only for a TV perspective, but also for the fan experience being there at the racetrack. I don't think we want to cut the experience that we're giving to fans now that they're paying a high ticket price for. And also, you have to look at the idea of if you cut the Cup race in half, then we have to look down at the lower levels, Xfinity and Truck, the things that we cover here on Grid Live Encore. They're going to be either the same distance as the Cup Series events or longer, and that's not a good idea either. And if you're going to cut them down proportionately, then there's going to be like no laps at all in the Truck Series races most nights. Now, I also don't like the idea of seeing the target demographic and how they kind of Gen Z or whatever, and how they kind of respond to media nowadays, and the consensus is, they just have a short attention span. And so therefore, to be profitable and to be a good, marketable sport, we have to also shorten our events so that more kids will watch us. I don't think that's how you should work society. And this goes for a lot of other things too. I think if they don't have the time to enjoy the sport for 4 hours. I mean, you're not going to be watching it for 4 hours. Who are you kidding? Do you watch an entire Baltimore Orioles game for 4 hours? I mean, you might from start to finish. Okay, you might from start to finish. But for me, my Braves, I mean, do I watch that the whole time? Probably not. But, it's more about the fan experience there at the event itself, I think. And they're getting the full ticket price for that. And also, you have to look at the history of these events. Most of them are for the Cup Series. They're all 500 or 400 miles. They're marquee events. Of course, we've just manipulated the Martinsville race this past weekend to be Blue Emu 400, which I'm actually kind of okay with, because with it being the night race under the lights, you don't want people to stay up as long. I kind of get the reasoning behind that.
I think if there was ever a time where fans were okay with a shorter Martinsville race, it was the Cup Series race this weekend.
Yeah, but, and I was kind of skeptical with that at first, and it turned out to be okay. But this sort of just all or none kind of mentality of just cutting the whole schedule. We may sound like old farts here, but I think you need to take a step back. I don't know where this thought came from, or why this came up to Chase or Hailie's mind, but maybe take a step back, think about it. And also, my overall consensus is if younger kids don't feel like watching it for 4 hours because their attention span is not there, then they probably don't need to be watching it. It may just not be for them.
Yeah, well, and you bring up a good point about baseball, because I think that's a sport where a lot of people have been trying to find ways to speed up games. And, they're talking about a pitch clock now, and the ghost runner and extra innings, and the new intentional walk rule. And those are all things that I'm not a fan of. I think there are ways that we can try to look at speeding up the game without fundamentally changing how the game is played. And when you look at the NASCAR side of things, I think actually some of the things that they've done namely stage racing, adding in 2 planned caution periods that I think a lot of times are much longer than they need to be, considering most of the time there's no incident to clean up or anything like that. I think that's something that we should look at instead of, cutting the race difference here. And, baseball similarly, I don't think very many people are expected to watch all 162 games of a season. You don't see them talking about shortening the games to 7 innings instead of 9 innings because the fans over there have too short attention spans. I think you can look at the double headers and the 7-inning double headers there and the response that they've gotten. A lot of fans don't like that. So, it's not just a NASCAR thing, but I think, in terms of a NASCAR side of things, you talk about half the distance, you're getting into Formula One length, you're getting into, like you said, times where the Xfinity race is that would be a companion race there would be longer than half the distance of the Cup race. So, that's something that we need to consider as well. We have some comments coming in here from the Martinsville weekend, and our own Adam Lemery says, I've been to Martinsville when it was 500 laps in the fall. I think, again, Martinsville was probably one of the tracks that we didn't need to be focusing on when it comes to the race length debate. I think, most fans were pleased with a 500 lapper there. We have another one of our regulars, Amber, here saying, hey, we went to Martinsville and the race was too long and boring. Love the hot dogs, though. I think everybody can agree with the last part of that there. I am curious, though, are you talking about Martinsville just this past weekend, or are you talking about another time you went there? Because I think that would maybe change how I read the comment, because, I'm looking at the Jeff Gluck poll. I think it was the 3rd lowest yes response that he's ever gotten in the 6 years now it's been that he's been running the poll. So a lot of fans not happy with the Cup race. Our own Kobe Lambeth says, I think some Cup races, not all, could be shortened a bit, maybe by 5 to 10%, but half the distance might be going a little too far. I cover endurance racing, so I have no issue with longer races. And I think, a lot of NASCAR fans have been using this argument as well. Part of the NASCAR experience has historically been, endurance, and not just to the Coke 600. I remember growing up as a fan, engine failures were a little bit more common than they are now. I think the technology has gotten a lot better over the last several years, but, I think that is part of a draw for some people. And when you shorten the race, you take that aspect away. Amber says 500 to 400 is not a big change, but I am happy it was 400 yesterday. And again, I completely agree. I think a lot of fans were certainly glad that was over. We've got a very active chat here tonight. Our own Joe Samniego as well coming in here saying, I prefer races between 2.5 hours and only major events hit the 3 hours and more length. Don't shorten Daytona 500, Southern 500, or Coke 600. Well, I think those are non-negotiable. I think even the ones that are on the side of shortening some of these races here, even they're acknowledging, look, we can't touch the crown jewels. Those are special. Those numbers mean something, even though with overtime, sometimes we touch the numbers at the end of those races, but that's a debate for another day. Kobe saying, remember when Pocono was a 500-mile race? And this, I think, we'll draw it all back here to what my argument would be. Pocono, absolutely, I think, was one of those tracks where, 500 miles, the race, you could argue that fans sitting, baking in the sun for 4 hours, maybe we could stand to bring that down to 400 miles. The Texas races being 500 miles, I don't think very many fans were complaining when one of those races went to 400, or, if we took the second race down to 400, that's not a very popular track to begin with. And Talladega as well. I think, when you consider a lot of the race is a single file procession and guys just wanting to try to get to the end of the race, you can look at that race and say, does Talladega really need to be 500 miles? Do we need to be wasting that many laps when a lot of times the drivers just take it easy anyway? But, I think for the most part, you don't want to be going much shorter than 400. And Kobe mentioned 5 to 10%. You go from 5 to 400, that's 20%. I think anything lower than that, really starts to be getting into a danger zone where you're talking about Cup races that are hardly any longer than an Xfinity race. And I don't think that should be the case.
Yeah, I don't understand. And I don't understand where this might go. This kind of mentality might go. I'm afraid that it may just end up, where do they want this to go? Do they want this to be like the races that aren't crown jewel races? Do they want them to be 20 lap sprints per stage? Is this what we want? Is this what the younger crowd wants? That might be stretching it too, but I just don't, I'm kind of apprehensive because I don't know where the next generations are going to want to take this.
Yeah, well, and, you brought up a good point as well, but just before we came on, if you shorten the Cup races, I think by scale, it doesn't make any sense to have an Xfinity race that's longer than a cup race, unless, one track wanted to try to start a new tradition or something and kind of make that their thing. I don't see that happening though. So if the cup race gets shortened, I would think by extension, you have to shorten the Xfinity or truck companion races if those are applicable situations. And, you're talking about, would I think a truck race at Pocono would maybe only have 6 or 8 laps in a stage. We can't be getting to that point where the stage lengths are that short and the races are that short there. So, I think this has a bunch of ripple effects, and it's always important to consider, you can't just make your case and, not think about all the effects that it's going to have all throughout the rest of the sport. I think a lot of fans on both sides of the argument are maybe doing that here. I think, as I do a lot of times, I come down somewhere in the middle. I think there are certain tracks that maybe we could stand to shorten it from 500 to 400, but I think a lot of those tracks have already done it. Pocono is a perfect example there. They used to do 500 miles at Dover back in the day. That's crazy to me, growing up in an era where that race has always been 400 laps and 400 miles. Joe bringing up something that I brought up as well. Dover used to be 500. That was more brutal with the old cars, and survival was key. And again, that goes back to what we talk about with the World 600, the Coca-Cola 600. I think endurance is a popular aspect of this sport as well. And that's something that people don't want to lose. So, Brandon, do you have any final thoughts here before we go into our race recaps?
Yeah, just final word. Just don't make change just for the sake of change. I feel like that's kind of what happens with a lot of younger thought. And I mean, I think we used to think like that too. When we had ideas about how we could improve the sport at a younger age. I don't know. And I mean, we're still young here, but it just, to me, when I first heard that, I just thought it was something that just came out of a NASCAR Reddit post or something like that. Just some weird pipe dream, and I don't mean to sound rude, but it just sounded ridiculous. And, but I see your middle ground, Ben, and I know where you would like to reason that out, and where some things that are 500 that should be 400 or even less.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things where you can't make a blanket statement and apply it to every track. There was another tweet I saw today that somebody said 400 miles should be the minimum, and I said, well, wait a second now. Let's do the math here. We're talking 800 laps at Martinsville. You go into the road course races and short tracks and things like that. We need to be careful when we make statements like that, because again, not every race is the same. And I think there are some races that could maybe stand to be shortened a little bit, but others, obviously, you don't really want to touch. And, I think that's important to consider as well.
Also, just want to take into account just the nature of Twitter too. It's just where you put little blurbs, little thoughts,
Yeah.
So we can't credit to Haley Deegan and her significant other. We can't take their thoughts like they're like thoughts from like Adam Stern, a Stern bomb or something. We have to take it as just little thoughts, little tweets. That's all it is.
Well, and in fairness, Deegan, I think, was getting a lot of hate, on Twitter and everything. And people were saying this is a disgraceful take from somebody who's supposed to be the future of a sport. And, we don't condone that either. Obviously,
No.
you have to keep it respectful. It's very hard to detect tone over text and on social media. So that's another thing to consider as well. So just be nice. I know it's asking a lot for the internet and for social media, unfortunately, but everybody do your best. Let's have a conversation. Let's welcome opposing viewpoints, and let's see, if we can try to open each other's minds and at least understand why we believe what side we're coming down on here before we cast any judgment on opinions that we maybe don't share.